Okay, my name is Douglas Thompson. In this video I'm going to be going over how to basically take apart and maintain a Glock 18 or a Glock 23 or any of the full auto WE-tech variants. And I think these are Tokyo Marui what am I trying to think? Copies. So they should work for Tokyo Maruis as well, but I'm not sure. And there are other copies out there. I think KJW is a copy of them. So anyway, see these are your takedown pins. You want to pull these both down. There's one on each side. Pull them down at the same time, and just give it a little bit of a push. Right. So here's your lower and your upper. And in a different video, if you guys have questions, I'll go over how to disassemble and reassemble the lower, and what everything does, and the Glock 18, 23, whatever, etc. variants are different from the 17, 27, 19. Oops. Being a bitch. There you go. Okay. Oops. So as you can see, if this thing would focus. You'll notice that right here is different. You notice that there's a gap right here, and there is not one right here. You notice that the trigger bar, that little thing, is a little bit in a different position. You also notice that the hammer actually cannot be. Damn it. Right here, this is actually what pushes down to release the hammer. See how that went up? Watch this part right here. See that how it went up? That's actually what holds that all together. So anyway, there are differences, other than just dimensions and parts being longer and shorter here and there. There are compatible parts like the slide catches, the takedown pins, screws, things like that. Springs. There are many similarities. I think the hammers are compatible. Things are compatible between these two. Pins, triggers. The trigger bars are not compatible, but there are things that are compatible. But today we're going to be going over just specifically the Glock 18, 23, all the full auto variant mechanisms. This is an aftermarket nozzle, but it's the same basic operation. So what you want to do is you want to remove your recoil spring. With the Gen 4s, at least from what I know, there's like this little cutaway, and that's actually how you remove your spring and stuff if you want to remove it. See that little cutaway? What I do is I line it up. See how it's like square up top and round on the bottom? That's how I do it. I line up the cutaway to match up the squared off part, and it seems to make taking it down easier. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that as well, but then you want to push your barrel forward off of your nozzle, because usually it'll be stuck like this. Just kind of hold your nozzle and then push your barrel forward like that, and then you can push it forward and tilt it like so, and then you remove it. And then if you want, you can this is your inner barrel and hop-up unit, and remove these two screws and mess with your hop-up. But what I'm specifically showing you, because this is the same on pretty much every Glock model I've used, but this is a bit different outer barrel, but this is what I'm more focused on. So for the longest time I couldn't get this thing off, and I wasn't too familiar with the full auto variants, but I'll show you the little trick here and what I was missing. So you want to get the appropriate size screwdriver, one that fits perfectly in your screw. You don't want any play, because that's how you strip your screws, and you got to go to the hardware store and everything. Now, when you tap that off, a few parts will come out. I'll explain them in a second. First of all, the rear sight is what holds it all together, which is, in my opinion, a bad design, but it seems to work. So there's the rear sight, and we're definitely going to need that for reassembly. This little thing right here is what goes back and forth inside. As you can see, there's a bit of wear right here. This is what goes back and forth to make it to where it goes from semi to full auto. That little spring is what returns it to full auto always. It sits right in the middle right there. You see that little groove. See how it's hard to do this on camera. See how it matches up like that. And I'll show you how to reassemble it, but that's what moves back and forth. And this is a very important part. This is actually what holds that piece I just explained to you. What holds that down, and then also this little rounded off portion is what holds the selector in place. So like when you put that on, it will actually, see how it wraps around the circular part of the selector. It's kind of what holds that in place. At this point, like, all this is free floating, but you have to remove this selector before you can get anywhere, and I'll show you how to do that. So in the inside of the frame, there's a cutaway right here, and I'll point to it because I've seen some other videos where they're not too descriptive on this. But there's a cutaway right here where it'll line up with your selector, the actual selector part, and then the slide. It'll line up. And what you want to do is on the outside of the gun here, you want to just twist it that way. But you can't push down twist it because the serrations are actually holding it in place. So you have to actually kind of like lift it up just ever so slightly, and then it'll go forward. Lift. Oh, that just shot off. That's exactly what you don't want to have happen, is what just happened. That's very unfortunate because both the spring and the detent, which is most important, just shot off. Now the spring is right here. I will look for the other part after the video is over, but and I'll still go over how to do that. But because I was doing it on camera, I was trying to show you what was going on. But normally, what you'd want to do is you do it by feel, and you cup your hand. So as soon as you get it lined up and pulled out, like, it shoots into your hand, and then it's actually in your hand. So to demonstrate what I'm talking about, let's say that detent was in here. I would cup my hand like this after I lined it up, and then slowly pulled out, right? Like that, and then it would shoot into my hand downwards, and then I would have it in my hand, and then I could set it down. But that was my fault, and I was trying to be as visual as I could. But anyway, so at this point, everything is able to be removed. The internal nozzle frame and everything. You just kind of wiggle it out, and then you have your upper, or your slide, whatever you want to call it. And then this is your on the Glock 18 versions and 23, this is a completely flat up top, but on the 17, 19, and 27 models, there will be like little cutaways right here for you, both for your nozzle guide to hold it in place, and then also where the spring is retained. But on this one, the spring is actually just floating in the top right here. So if you're looking at it for reference, the spring will be on the located on the left side from the top. So you can just pull this out, and the spring will come with it. Be careful not to bend or lose the spring. While your gun will function without this, and it'll function fine, it won't be as presentable. So like when you pull the slide back, sometimes your nozzle will kind of stay forward. But when you're actually cycling the gun, it does its job, and like it'll still work without it, but it won't work as good. But this is a little on the spring here. If it'll focus, you'll see on one side there are more coils, or tighter coils. See how it's a bit tighter on the left than it is on the right? That's the side that you want to put your spring guide on, and then you want obviously this longer part to be locked into the spring, and this can just pull out at this point. Now this there's a little screw on top here, and you can undo that, and then what'll come out is a spring that makes it to where the the floating valve inside will return to its proper place for the next shot. The floating valve itself, and then the retainer. And I'm not going to take that apart because it's kind of unnecessary. There's only 3 parts, and they're very obvious how they go. The little knobby end right here goes into that little housing, and like it's really obvious how it goes together. Anyway, so and then here's your piston head and your piston housing, if you want to call it that, or nozzle housing. And this is it fully disassembled, besides the piston O-ring and the plastic head. And if you get to this point, on all the models I've seen, this is kind of wobbly, and I think it's intentional. But one thing I like to do is I like to unscrew this here, again using the proper size screwdriver. Make sure it's not loose at all. Move this, and I cannot remember what size washer this is, but I like to put some kind of a spacer. And my flash just died, so bear with me. I like to put some kind of a spacer in here, and this I can't remember which size it is, but you can measure it out and it'll be perfect. Just get the proper size washer, and it's the same exact size, and it makes it to where when you attach this, it stays perfectly placed. And let's see if it increases performance once we put it all together. I'll be able to know better than you, of course, because I remember what it felt like and shot like before. Now, since I lost that little detent, the selector will still work. But see how the head does not wobble around anymore. Now, it will cause a little bit of a fitment issue. Like when this is on here, the nozzle will not return fully to its most rearward position. So it may cause some issues, but we're just going to test this theory out. If the theory does not work, then by all means don't do this, and just use this as a tutorial on how to reassemble your gun. But if this does work, and my theory is correct here, and this might improve consistency FPS wise, so get your spring guide on your more coiled side of the springs and place it in the opening right here. I'm trying to do this while looking at the camera, seeing what you guys see. You can also slide the nozzle a little bit forward to aid in, and it's make sure it's down there. Make sure it doesn't do that. Shoot up. And this seems to be a little bit tighter, and I'm thinking it's because that spacers in there that I put in there. But we will see if it interferes with the function or not. So it'll stick out a little bit past, and that's okay. I'll show you how to get past that here. And you want to slide it into place in your slide, and it will not go all the way down because the little detent, you might not be able to see this, but because the flash is off now, but there's a little detent that's sticking out a bit past farther than it should. But if you look down on your slide, you'll be able to see where the detent is and go from the top of your ejection port and push it down, and then you should be able to push it all the way in. And then you want to do a function check, and right now this seems pretty tight, and again I think it's because of that spacer, because the spring seems to be functioning. See how it's returning back to there, but the piston head's a bit tighter. We'll see how that interferes with or enhances the performance once it's all put back together. But normally your nozzle should just freely return all the way back with that spring in place properly. But for now, just go ahead and trust me. So this spring is going to be facing, if you're looking at the bottom of your slide and the internals, the spring's going to be facing towards the right. You'll see the groove it fits in. You want to place this in first, because once the selector is in place, it's a little bit more difficult to put in, and usually it retains itself. Then at this point, you would want to get your spring and detent and assemble it in. There's a little hole, or is it a little hole right there, and So you'd want to put the, your spring and detent in ahead of time, and then keep it in the upright position and actually turn your slide to where it would fit, like this. And then you would press against the frame with your finger to make sure the detent is kind of snug up on the side, and then you get something small. It can be anything, like a small screwdriver or punch pin, just anything that's small enough to get between here, this little gap right here on the side, right there. And then you'd push down on the detent and very carefully push it in like that, and release the pressure on this side. And don't let it go, because it will fly off, and that's like it did on me. So now that this is all assembled, you would check to see if your selector was working while holding this down, and see how it's pushing it to the side and then releasing it. That's what you'd want to look for, to make sure that's working. Then you'd get your selector retainer and your whatever else that little part is, retainer, and you'd place it in there. Make sure it's all the way down and flush with the back plate. So like, see how it's flush right there, right here. You'll make sure it's flush. Then you get your rear sight, and you obviously face the sight portion to the user, and gently place the screw in there. Don't push it down, because you don't want to mess up the plastic threads. And then right here, it's very important not to over tighten this, because this is actually, it's just screwing into plastic. So the selector will still work, although the recoil of the gun might force it into a different position. Then you'd want to make sure and check again that this is moving freely. Mine is, the spring is, you can tell it's working, but it's just extra tight because of that spacer I put in there. Now, hopefully this won't affect the function of the gun. We will see. I'm hoping to get a little bit more FPS consistency from shot to shot, and then also possibly a little bit more recoil. Now, it's just a theory, so I don't know if this is actually going to work. You place in your barrel just the same as you would remove it, just in reverse. Make sure it's fully seated, and before you try to insert your recoil spring. Again, what I do is I put the little cutaway part in the flat part of my slide, and you'll see that at least for me, it goes in super easy. And that would be a completed upper. You would then place it on your lower receiver. I like to go in the middle first. A lot of people like to go all the way to the front, but I feel like that has more room to get damaged. So I lock it in the middle first, and then just pull back, and then you do a little cycle check, function check. And as you can see, the nozzle is not returning fully. We will see if that makes a difference in our little shooting test here. I'm gonna load it up with some BBs here. We'll just load it up with 6 or 7. This is a Glock 17 WE-tech polymer magazine, and that I have slightly, I don't know if you want to call it upgraded, with a stronger follower spring. And so I loaded in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shots. I will be shooting off camera, but I don't lie about what happens, so I'll let you know if this works or not. So first of all, the nozzle did not return initially. Let's see if it loaded around though. It did. Let's see if the actual recoil will actually make the nozzle return to. Okay, that worked. The nozzle jammed up. Let's see if it has passed its problems. Okay, so it's not actually loading the next round because the nozzle is getting stuck. So I don't recommend that mod. It worked on one of my pistols. I just thought maybe it would work on this one. It did not. That's okay. So just the reason why I made this video is because I was going to be taking the gun apart anyway to try that out, and I figured I might as well do it on camera to show you guys step by step how to do this. Be very careful with that selector detent, because as you just saw, it's very easy to lose, and it shoots far. Like, I'm gonna go look for it right now. But I'll do a future video on how to disassemble the Glock 17 upper, and then I will also show you how to do the Glock 17 lower receiver and the full auto variant lower receivers in the future. Most likely I'll do the Glock 17 first because it's I'd say the more popular out of all the Glock models. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video and learned something. Be very careful with your springs and your detents, and if you have any questions, let me know, and have a good day. It is the day after Christmas, so I hope you guys are enjoying your presents, and happy airsofting.